The sky above Earth's defense ring burned red with enemy fire. Shattered hulls drifted like bone fragments across the void, silent markers of fleets that had sworn to hold the line and failed. Inside the command hub, the last bastion of organized resistance, voices collided, shouts, curses, desperate calculations that didn't add up. Dr. Elara Vance stood near the back, arms folded, listening. She had learned long ago that generals never wanted her words at first. They demanded strategies measured in missile yields and fleet maneuvers, not whispers about alien honor codes or ancient war chants. "They'll break through within the hour," Admiral Rourke barked, his face a map of exhaustion. "We concentrate fire on the western arc, push them back just long enough to evacuate the colonies." Another general slammed a fist on the console. "Evacuate? That's surrender. We strike their carriers. Burn them before they burn us." The chamber vibrated as another volley from the Kargath Dominion struck the outer barrier. Shields flickered, bleeding sparks across the observation glass. A junior officer muttered, "We're counting seconds, not hours." Ilara's voice finally slipped into the noise. "You can't win this battle in space. The Kargath will not stop until the oath is broken." Heads turned. Some scowled, others dismissed her outright. Admiral Rourke rubbed his temples. "Dr. Vance, we don't have time for philosophy. This is survival." She stepped forward anyway. "It isn't philosophy. It's the one lever you haven't pulled. They fight because they must fulfill their ancestral oath of conquest. End the oath, you end the war." The council chamber froze in uneasy silence. For a heartbeat, even the thunder of distant explosions seemed to wait. Then laughter broke it. "End the oath," one of the commodores scoffed. "Do you plan to whisper them into submission?" Her gaze didn't waver. "Yes?" The derision rolled heavier now. "You're a linguist, not a warrior. They've slaughtered billions. What makes you think they'll listen?" Ilara drew in a breath. The memory of her brother's final transmission, cut short in static during the border conflict, pressed against her ribs. He had believed his fighter squadron could buy time for civilians to escape. They had died screaming into the void, never knowing the warlord they fought wasn't defending his people, he was keeping a vow alive. "Because," she said, "no one has ever tried to speak to them differently. You keep shouting with weapons. I will whisper what they fear to hear, that their war is hollow." Admiral Rourke's jaw tightened. He had buried too many crews to gamble on untested ideas. "You asking me to send you alone to their flagship? Without arms, without protection?" "Yes?" The command center trembled again, another section of the defense ring collapsing. Sirens wailed. Rourke's gaze locked on her. "You realize they'll kill you before you take a single step inside their throne chamber." "Then I die," she said evenly, "but not before I plant a crack in the warlord's mind. If he falters, even for a moment, that's more than all your fleets have achieved." For the first time, there was no laughter. Only the rasp of weary officers measuring madness against inevitability. The Commodore who had mocked her earlier leaned forward. "If you fail, humanity vanishes. You understand that?" Ilara nodded. "And if you go on without trying, humanity vanishes anyway." Silence held. Rourke finally turned to the operations officer. "How long until the next breach?" 23 minutes, sir." He exhaled through his teeth, then looked back at Ilara. "You'll get one shuttle. No escort. If by some miracle you survive the approach, you'd better be ready to prove your theory." Her heartbeat quickened, but her voice remained calm. "I've been ready since my brother died." The order was sealed with a reluctant nod. The shuttle was barely more than a coffin with engines. Ilara strapped herself in, her hands steady though the reality of what she had chosen pressed hard against her chest. Through the small viewport she caught a glimpse of Earth's curve below, blue, fragile, half hidden by smoke from orbital fires. "Doctor," the comm officer's voice crackled in her ear, "once you cross their perimeter, we lose you. No signals can breach their dampening fields. If you're captured—" "I won't be captured," she said. "I'll be heard." The shuttle's clamps released. She felt the lurch of freedom, the silence before acceleration. Engines roared, and the defense ring fell away behind her, a scarred halo over humanity's home. The void ahead swarmed with Kargath warships. Colossal vessels shaped like jagged spears, scales of metal glinting red beneath the light of distant suns. Their formation pulsed with terrifying unity, like a single living creature closing in for the kill. Ilara whispered to herself, a ritual she had built in childhood. Words can be weapons. Silence can be louder than thunder. Remember that. The shuttle shuddered under crossfire. Warning lights flashed. She pushed calm into her veins. You expected to die the moment you volunteered, she reminded herself. Every second alive is a victory. As if sensing her resolve, the alien fleet parted. Two enormous dreadnoughts shifted formation, creating a corridor. The shuttle systems flagged a tractor beam pulling her toward the center, toward the flagship of High Marshal Corthal. She let out a thin breath. The warlord had accepted her gamble. He would let her inside, if only to amuse himself before the execution. The chamber swallowed her whole. Alien guards, taller than any human, escorted her across a floor of black metal carved with battle runes. The air smelled of iron and ash. At the far end, on a throne forged from weapons of conquered species, sat Corthal. He was monstrous in size, his scaled armor blending with the throne so he seemed grown from it. His eyes glowed a dull amber, ancient and unblinking. When he spoke, his voice shook the chamber. A human dares come alone. His mouth twisted in something between a smile and a snarl. Have your kind finally run out of screams? Ilara stood at the base of the dais, unarmed, unarmored. Not out of screams. Out of patience. The guards hissed, but Corthal lifted a clawed hand, silencing them. His gaze narrowed. And what weapon do you carry? A whisper? Her pulse thundered, but her voice stayed soft. Yes? For the first time in centuries of conquest, High Marshal Corthal laughed. It echoed through the chamber like falling stone. Yet beneath it, for just a flicker, curiosity sparked. Ilara saw it. And she knew she had bought herself a few more breaths. The throne room's ceiling hung like an iron sky. Heat rose from concealed vents, smelling of oil and hunted worlds. Ilara let the weight of it pass through her. Fear wanted to make her small. She refused its space. Corthal leaned forward, scales rasping against the hafts of fused weapons that formed his seat. You came to end my oath, he said. You think my ancestors built empires to hear nursery breath. I came to tell you what no one has risked saying to your face, Lara answered. Your oath is broken already. You just haven't admitted it. A growl rolled through his chest. Around them the honor guard shifted, tusks catching the gloom. Choose your next words as if they are last ones. That's the point, she said. Every soldier thinks these are their last words. Your oath promised meaning through victory. Yet your victories consume the meaning. Your generals recite triumphs and forget who they are between them. What does an oath swear, if not to bind identity? And what identity remains when the war never lets you stop long enough to own one? Corthal waved her closer with a lazy blade of his hand. It wasn't mercy, it was confidence. She stepped up the lower dais, feeling the heat intensify. He studied her face the way a predator studies how a creature breathes. You presume to lecture a species that carved its law from battle. We do not own identity, we forge it. The Dominion exists because the oath forbids weakness. Then why are you tired? Ilara asked, gentle as picking a lock. His eyes narrowed. A soft hiss passed his teeth. An old predator does not sleep in front of prey. You just did, she said. In the pause after your laugh. The guard stirred again. She didn't glance at them. Her heartbeat was a clean drum, steady, precise. She lowered her voice. You were a hatchling when they fed you the chant, weren't you? You memorized each syllable before you learned your own reflection. By scale and spear, no horizon unbent, no blood unspilled. Finish it, he rumbled. She did. until fear itself kneels and begs the spear for rest. Silence snapped tight. The line wasn't in the common archives. She had found it 3 years ago inside a corrupted fragment of a Kargath funerary hymn, a line no translation flagged because it wasn't boasting. It was confession. She let it sit there, a thorn under the skin. Korthal rose. The throne complained under the shift of mass. He descended one step, then another, until he towered a breath away. Up close, Ilara saw spider-fine scars across his jaw, the delicate marks of juvenile ritual, long buried under newer wounds. Who taught you that verse? The question was soft, and therefore dangerous. You're dead, she said. They are louder in your halls than you let yourself admit. He stared. The heat pressed in. Outside the hull, the wall moved, indifferent and exact. She pictured the council fleets as patterns on a table. Move a piece here, exchange a wing there, busy work beside this single conversation. He lifted a claw to her chin, not quite touching. You claim the oath is broken. Prove its fracture. Your empire has no succession plan, she said, steady. You use trial by war to choose the next marshal, which means only survivors lead, not the wise. It worked while the oath felt close to completion, conquer, absorb, repeat. But the map filled. The oath offers no clause for arrival. So you found a new horizon, us. And another after us. You always will. That is not an oath, it is a whole. One does not complete the horizon, he said. One grows teeth to eat it. And when the teeth wear down. She let the quiet land. His pupils narrowed, a predator thinking, not lunging. She pressed. You remember the first wasting star, she asked. The winter campaign you commanded 2 centuries ago. You secured the system in 6 cycles, yet you delayed the victory chant for 12. You told the priests the timing wasn't auspicious. That was a lie. His eyes flared. Your archives presume much. I read the accounts. That winter you buried a son. The charm would have sealed the battle as triumph, but nothing felt like triumph. You delayed because the oath said conquer, while grief said stop. For the first time, you tasted a word your tongue wasn't allowed to hold. He moved so fast the hall blurred. A spear point kissed the base of her throat. Warmth threatened to leave her spine. The guards roared approval, a chorus of iron. Ilara's breath came, small and exacting. Name it, he said. Enough, she whispered. The word slid into the air like a forbidden spice. The guards fell silent, not cowed, but confused. There was no Kargath equivalent. Their lexicon had words for surrender and for rest, for defeat and for stalemate. Not this. Not a boundary drawn by self, not enemy. Korthal stepped back as if burned. We do not speak endings that are choice. That is why you can't end a war, she said. You only know collapse or conquest. Anything else feels like treason. The hall's lights dimmed a fraction, an old ship breathing, letting power route to weapons. Somewhere beyond, a bombardment charge built. Time thinned. Korthal turned away, tail sweeping the air. He climbed to his throne in 3 long strides and sat like the fall of a gate. I have indulged your theater. It amused me. It taught me nothing. It taught you the shape of the word you refuse. He raised a hand. Executor. A female officer in black armor broke from the line. Her crest bore the twin slashes of the marshal's blade, enforcer of will. High Marshal. Take the human to the severing chamber, he said. Make the lesson clean. The officer's eyes flicked to Ilara. No gloat, no pity. Function. 2 guards closed in, gauntlets like manacles. Ilara didn't resist. She bowed, once, to Korthal. You asked me to finish the verse, she said. You never asked why your priests hid it. He ignored her, or pretended to. She let them lead her through a doorway veined with trophies, plasma-etched plates from species with names no breath now shaped. The corridor beyond bent downward, narrowing. Somewhere distant, machinery hummed a frequency designed to sting nerves. Wait, Corthal said. They halted. The word wasn't loud. It was absolute. He didn't look at her when he spoke. You will not die in shadow. If your whisper carries truth, it must survive daylight. The executor's chin dipped. In the viewing hall, then. They turned, redirecting her up a different artery of the ship. The hall they entered rose like an amphitheater. Ranks of commanders filled the tiers, armor hooked with campaign rings. At the center stood a circular platform, surrounded by a shimmering field. No stains. No smell. Efficient death. Elara stepped onto the platform without prompting. A thin veil of static hugged her skin. She folded her hands. Across the hall, Corthal took the upper dais. The commanders' voices murmured and faded. He nodded to the executor. Proceed. A column lifted from the floor beside Elara and formed a lattice of light around her throat. No blade, just containment, the suggestion of a cutter waiting permission. She looked up at the tiers of faces and saw, scattered among them, a handful who watched not with hunger, but with something war never admits, curiosity. Corthal tapped the arm of his chair. Human. You spoke of a crack. Show it. Eliminate the chant, she said. A ripple of offense. Several commanders hissed openly. She raised her voice, not volume, presence. Every victory in your empire requires the chant. The sound binds the oath to the act. If you silence the chant, the act loses sanctity. Without sanctity, a victory is only logistics. If you want to know whether your oath owns you or whether you own it, try not singing. The executor frowned, as if the suggestion itself were a blade near her own throat. Corthal leaned forward. You ask us to dishonor our dead. I'm asking you to test whether the dead are leading you to join them, Elara said. You think your power lives in noise. What if it lives in choosing when not to make it? The field tightened a whisper. She felt it like a warning in her bloodstream. She kept her eyes on Corthal. There is a second test, she said. It's older than your throne, the ritual of 2 measures. Name it, he said again, but the edge was different now, less blade, more weight. Measure the empire's strength without war. For 1 full cycle, decree a harvest season instead of a campaign. Count food, births, songs, inventions. If the measure rises, your oath steals from your own children. If it falls, the oath protects them. She paused. Either way, you learn truth. An oath that forbids truth is not law. It is addiction. The hall bristled. A commander called out, she slanders the marrow. Another spat, break her. Corthal lifted his hand. The noise died. He rose, slowly, as if the air had grown thick. My enemies sent a scholar to unfasten my blade, he said, and the faintest ghost of amusement touched his mouth. They forget a blade can be set down by the hand that sharpened it. He descended toward her, 1 step at a time. The field hummed. The lattice gleamed against her throat. Up close, the age in him showed, not frailty, density. The accumulation of years as sediment. He stopped an arm's length away. For a long breath they simply regarded each other, 2 points of gravity deciding whether to orbit or collide. You said a word we do not have, he murmured. Elara answered with the same quiet that had carried her here. You've felt it all your life. A tremor passed through the deck, distant weapons finishing a charge. The ship waited for its master. Corthal looked at the executor. His voice dropped to a register that made metal listen. Hold, he said. The lattice flickered, then stabilized. No release. Not yet. Across the tiers, the commanders shifted, unsettled by a pause they could not quantify. Elara let her lungs empty halfway and stay there, a held note. Corthal turned his head slightly, not taking his eyes off her. Signal the fleets, he said. Delay the strike. A hiss of shock. The hall rippled with it. The executor's jaw tightened. High Marshal. Delay, he repeated. The command rolled out on encrypted bands, a hush imposed on an empire engineered for noise. He faced Ilara again. You have one more breath to make this worth my first disobedience. She swallowed once, the only movement she allowed herself. Then hear it, she said, voice a thread pulled through iron. Enough. The viewing hall hung in a silence sharper than any blade. Rows of Kargath commanders shifted uneasily, claws twitching on weapon hilts, waiting for the order that had never once in their history been delayed. Ilara stood inside the lattice, its hum close enough to taste, her throat lined with light that promised to sever at a flick. High Marshal Korthal remained before her, broad shoulders casting shadows across the platform. He hadn't moved since commanding the fleets to stand down. That single hesitation had rippled through the Empire like a fault line under pressure. Ilara steadied herself. Her whisper had carried this far, but the ground beneath her was brittle. If he turned away now, her life and humanity's fleets would vanish in the same hour. She breathed once, measured, then spoke. You asked me to make it worth your disobedience. Then let me name what you already carry. You are tired. A ripple of insult flashed through the ranks. One commander snarled, the marshal does not tire. But Korthal silenced them with a raised claw. His amber eyes locked on her. Explain. You have won more battles than any living being. Yet none ended. They blurred together into a single endless march. Victories should close wounds. Yours only tear new ones. He bared his teeth. Endless war is strength. We endure while others fall. She shook her head. Strength without rest rots from the inside. You know this. You felt it when you buried your son. The hall recoiled. Half a dozen commanders hissed openly, scandal and fury in their voices. To speak of a marshal's bloodline was sacrilege. Spears rattled against the floor. Korthal didn't lash out. His stare deepened, searching her face for the source of such forbidden knowledge. At last he growled, low and dangerous. You presume to wound me with memory. No, Ilara said softly. I presume to remind you that you were more than a weapon once. That part of you still exists, even if your oath smothered it. The lattice field trembled, its light flickering in time with the tension swelling through the hall. Every commander leaned forward, caught between outrage and the magnetic pull of forbidden words. Korthal's jaw tightened. You speak of weakness. My oath forbids it. Her whisper cut across him. Your oath doesn't forbid it. It fears it. The phrase struck like shrapnel. A murmur ran through the tears. The idea was alien, almost unspeakable, that an oath itself could feel fear. Yet the silence that followed wasn't dismissal. It was consideration. Ilara pressed into the quiet. Fear is the reason your ancestors bound every breath to conquest. They were terrified of stillness. They thought if they stopped, they would vanish. But stillness isn't death. Stillness is where memory breathes. You felt it once. You just refused to name it. Korthal's claws dug into the dais railing, metal screeching under his grip. For the first time, the mask of certainty cracked. His gaze shifted, not away from her, but inward, as if searching halls inside himself he hadn't dared enter. The executor stepped forward, voice clipped. High Marshal, this poison undermines discipline. Give the command. The light at Ilara's throat pulsed. One word from him, and she would be gone. She met his eyes and whispered again, steady as stone under water. You are afraid of your own silence. The hall froze. The words didn't echo, they sank, heavy, undeniable. Korthal's breath rattled once, deep in his chest. He moved closer until the field shimmered against his armor. His voice was low, stripped of performance. I have never been silent. Then try it, she said. For one heartbeat. No chants, no vows. Just you. The lattice dimmed, not because it powered down, but because Korthal's gesture stilled the executor's hand. He closed his eyes. The hall held its breath. For a single instant the greatest warlord of the Dominion made no sound. When he opened them again, something had shifted. Not broken, not surrendered, shifted, like tectonic plates groaning under pressure. The commanders erupted, unable to bear it. "This is treachery," one shouted. "End her," another roared. Corthal's voice cut them flat. Enough. The same word Ilara had given him. The whole fell silent, not from obedience alone, but from shock. No marshal had ever used it. He looked down at her, eyes unreadable. "You wield whispers as if they are blades." "They are sharper," she said. His gaze slid across the ranks of his war council. Murmurs twisted like smoke. Some glared at her with killing intent, others with unease. He knew what they did not, that her words had planted something he could not unhear. The executor, braver than most, spoke again. "High Marshal, our fleets await. Delay breeds doubt. Order them to strike before weakness spreads." Corthal's jaw worked. He lifted his head toward the ceiling, where tactical feeds hovered like constellations. He saw the council fleets arrayed in desperation, the broken line of human ships barely holding orbit. The strike order would erase them. The oath demanded it. But the whisper still pulsed inside him, fragile and corrosive all at once. Ilara risked one final thread. "You can end them today. Burn Earth, crush the council. But your oath will still hunger tomorrow. And the day after. Until the last of your kind is ash in its own furnace. Or you can do the one thing the oath cannot imagine, you can choose." Corthal lowered his gaze to her, his expression carved from centuries of battle and burden. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he turned to the executor. "Hold the fleets," he commanded. Gasps tore through the chamber. Shock, fury, disbelief. The executor stiffened, every instinct rejecting it. "High Marshal, the oath." "My oath is mine to wield," Corthal thundered. "Not yours." The hall went still again, cowed by a voice that had commanded for centuries. But Ilara heard what they didn't, the fracture in his certainty. She let the silence breathe. Then, softly, she said the word once more. "Enough." His eyes flicked to her. For the first time since the war began, High Marshal Corthal didn't look like a legend carved in steel. He looked like a being standing at the edge of an abyss, realizing there might be another path besides falling. The lattice field dissolved. The platform dimmed. Ilara stood free, though her legs trembled. She bowed her head, not in submission, but in recognition of the moment. The war had not ended. Not yet. But for the first time, it had paused. The hall still smelled of steel and heat, but a new air pressed into the silence, an unease no battle chant could drown. Ilara stood free now, the lattice gone, yet she felt the weight of 1,000 alien eyes watching for a slip, a falter, anything that could justify cutting her down. High Marshal Corthal sat rigid on his throne, claws hooked over the armrests, amber eyes turned inward. The War Council leaned forward, whispering, their voices sharp as blades. They wanted blood, order, certainty. Instead, their warlord stared at the human who had dared speak a word their tongue had never held. At last, Corthal's voice rolled out, slow, heavy. "You gave me a choice where none existed. But choice is a wound. Once opened, it bleeds. My empire was built to cauterize such wounds." Ilara lifted her chin. "Or to hide them. You fear that if you stop, you'll crumble. But stopping isn't crumbling, it's surviving." The executor stepped forward, helm gleaming in the chamber's light. "High Marshal, end this. Her words twist our marrow. Give the command, and we will erase her from memory." Corthal did not look at his officer. His gaze stayed locked on Ilara. "Why should I trust your whisper when it endangers everything we are?" She stepped closer, the echo of her boots carried in the hush. "Because your people follow you. Not the oath. You break the chant, and they'll still stand. They will stand because you told them to. That is power greater than the vow of the dead." Murmurs rose, a tide of disbelief. Corthal's jaw tightened. He stood, massive frame unfolding, and the council stilled under his shadow. He raised his clawed hand toward the chamber's ceiling where tactical constellations shimmered, the Council's crippled fleets, Earth's defense ring in flames, alien carriers waiting for his command. The gesture alone should have unleashed annihilation. Instead, he clenched his fist and the displays dissolved. "Signal all fleets," he thundered. "Hold fire." Shock spread through the ranks. A commander cried out, "The oath forbids this." Corthal's roar silenced him. "The oath forbids nothing. It is I who forged it into law. And I who can set it down." The council quivered. Some lowered their heads in reluctant obedience. Others gripped weapons, torn between loyalty and doctrine. Elara seized the moment. Her voice was steady, but not loud. "One cycle. Call no chance, strike no worlds. Count what grows in peace. If the oath truly strengthens you, you will return to it stronger. If not, you will finally see the truth you've hidden from yourselves." The hall bristled again, but Corthal lifted his hand for silence. He descended from the throne, each step shaking the floor, until he stood before her. His eyes searched hers with a weight no human could fully bear. "What you ask is treason," he said. She met his gaze. "No. What you've lived is slavery." His chest rose once, then fell, like the sigh of a mountain. At last he nodded. "One cycle. A harvest season without conquest. Let it be decreed." The chamber erupted. Some roared in rage, others in stunned silence. The executor dropped to one knee, torn between defiance and duty. The War Council fractured in whispers and protests. But the order had been spoken. The Empire's voice had shifted. Corthal turned from them and faced the great observation window at the chamber's rear. The stars spilled across the dark like salt on black stone. For the first time in centuries, they were not a battlefield, just sky. He spoke, not to his council, but to her. "You've stolen my war, human. What will you do with the silence you demanded?" Elara felt her throat tighten. Images of Earth's burning defenses, of her brother's last breath, of millions who had already been lost, swam through her mind. She whispered, "I will let them remember how to live." The words lingered in the chamber like a seed dropped into foreign soil. Some would trample it. Others would guard it. But it was planted. Corthal turned his head, the faintest curl of weariness crossing his features. "Leave this hall before I change my mind." Two guards approached, not with weapons raised, but with uneasy deference. They guided her toward the exit, and no one stopped them. Behind her, voices rose, arguments, fury, disbelief, but none of it mattered. The fleets had been ordered to hold. Humanity had survived a war without firing the final shot. The shuttle ride back through the alien armada felt unreal. Colossal ships loomed like steel mountains, weapons bristling, yet not a single cannon turned toward her. They held formation, waiting for a command that would not come. The silence between them was louder than any bombardment. When Earth's battered defense ring appeared on her viewport, she saw the disbelief ripple through her own people. The expected firestorm never fell. The channels burst with frantic voices. Why have they stopped? Is this a trap? Who ordered the ceasefire? Elara's shuttle was identified, and the comms officer nearly wept. "Dr. Vance, you're alive." "I am," she said quietly. "And so is Earth." The council chamber on the defense ring was chaos when she stepped inside. Officers argued over whether to press advantage or retreat. Admiral Rourke turned to her, eyes sharp with suspicion. "What did you do?" "I spoke," she said simply. "Spoke?" He looked incredulous. "They held because you talked to him." She didn't correct him. She only said, "They will not attack. Not for one cycle." Murmurs spread, disbelief colliding with relief. Some demanded proof. Others wanted to launch an offensive before the aliens changed their minds. Elara raised her voice over the storm. "If you strike now, you prove them right, that humans only know how to kill when afraid. Hold. Breathe. Show them we can survive in silence." Her words landed with mixed weight. Some officers shook their heads. But Admiral Rourke studied her for a long moment, then exhaled. For one cycle, he agreed. Later, when the council emptied and the stars quieted outside, Ilara stood alone at the viewport. The silence pressed against her, vast and unbroken. It wasn't victory, not yet. The Dominion could return, the Oath could rise again. But for now, the war had been stopped by something no weapon had ever achieved. She thought of Corthal, of the crack in his armor, of the moment he closed his eyes and felt stillness for the first time. The universe was still dangerous, but it had learned a new word. Enough, she whispered, and let the silence hold it.